Let's do this. Welcome, everyone. I can't quite see you all, but I can sense you as the chat over here goes crazy. Welcome to this workshop, this virtual workshop on the master prompt method. This has been a long time coming. This has been a long time coming, and I'm just so excited to share with you all some stuff that I think is kind of going to blow your mind. In fact, I can pretty much say it's going to blow your mind, even if you're someone who has been following what's happening in artificial intelligence. Before we get started, I have a couple of requests. One is actually, I don't because we don't have cameras. So I'm not going to ask you to turn on your cameras because we are in webinar mode. But the other one I will ask, which is to tell us your questions. We're really here to answer your questions. We're going to have plenty of time to answer all of them. And the ideal way to do that is not in the chat. So if you're used to the typical Zoom meeting format, that's done in the chat, but we're in webinar mode. So we have a dedicated, if you look on the Zoom toolbar there, a Q&A button. Okay. So if you press that Q&A button right now, actually, you can see that there's a special interface for you to put in questions. And then also you can upvote other people's questions. So we're going to prioritize the questions that are most upvoted. And so I encourage you to both ask and vote on the questions you want to see answered. One more thing, which is we have maxed out the 1,000-person limit on our Zoom call. So many of you are joining via the YouTube live stream. So I welcome you as well. I will try to go over to the YouTube live stream chat and answer some of your questions as well. And so listen for the Q&A section when I'll head over to the YouTube live stream and address some of those as well. All right. And because I know this question is going to be asked already, there will be a full recording from the very beginning to the very end sent to every single person that's registered for this call, whether you were able to join the Zoom webinar or you were on the YouTube live stream. As long as you're registered via the event page that we sent out, then you're going to be good. Okay. All right. So let's begin with introductions. Okay. I'll go first. And then I'll ask my partner here, Hayden, to introduce himself. And I know many of you probably know me or know of me. You probably are here because of a link or an announcement that I posted in some place. But just in case you don't, or just in case you found this on social media or something, the short version of my story is almost 20 years ago, about 18 years ago, I started coming down. I started experiencing this mysterious illness, this condition, which was this like pain and tension and numbness in the right side of my neck and my throat. Like for no reason, no apparent cause, just out of the blue one day. And that kicked off a years-long odyssey of me seeing so many different kinds of doctors in multiple countries, trying every treatment you can imagine. Never really finding exactly what was the cause. And the medication that I took for that caused symptoms, really severe symptoms, like severe short-term memory loss, real problems focusing, a lot of mental cognitive problems. So the only real answer that I found, the solution I found, was to start relying on technology, to start relying on software. So I started kind of offloading my brain, my ideas, my memories, my to-dos, my projects, my schoolwork at the time onto a category of software called digital note-taking apps. And those apps kind of saved my life, really changed everything for me. I thought my life was over, I had no future. And because of this technology being available, I was able to not only, survive, but start a business and become a writer and start a family and all these goals that I had for my life. So around 10 years ago, I began realizing that this deficiency, what I thought was a deficiency or disability, had actually become a superpower, and I began to teach it. I began to blog about it. I began to do corporate workshops. I began to teach live cohort-based courses on this topic of how to build a second brain, which is how I began to think of my digital note-taking app. Around 3 years ago, I packaged all of that knowledge and experience and expertise into a book called Building a Second Brain, which has now sold over 350,000 copies in over 30 countries and 20 something languages, which just completely blows my mind, no pun intended, because I really thought it was this tiny, nerdy, niche interest that I had that apparently a lot of people have resonated with. Finally, about 18 months ago, or between 18 months and 2 years ago, I stopped teaching. It's actually surprising to a lot of people. I stopped teaching the Building a Second Brain cohorts, and we stopped offering them. And I didn't really share this at the time, but one of the main reasons for that is because of AI. I saw this AI wave coming, and I realized, oh my gosh, this is all going to change. Note taking is going to change, knowledge management, productivity, business, all these topics that I teach about are going to completely change. And I cannot, in good conscience, keep advocating for a pre-AI way of doing those things. So I put it all to a stop, and I've spent the last 18 plus months really deeply immersed in studying and experimenting and trying to figure out, doing small workshops and small events, trying to figure out what this new era is about, like what it means to live in an AI first world, what productivity looks like in an AI, transformed business environment, all these kinds of questions. And I feel like I now have an answer. Okay, which is why I'm so excited about this. I feel like I've been wandering in the desert. I've been on this epic journey, and I'm coming back, and I've found something really amazing that I think even if you don't join the program that we're introducing today, just the distinctions and the perspectives and the lenses that we introduce on this call, I think are going to be really, really helpful for you in just understanding and adapting to what's happening in AI. All right. So a really crucial piece of this puzzle of what I found that I'm bringing to you now was meeting Hayden around 6 months ago. Okay, so I'll say a little more about that, but if you would please, Hayden, welcome, by the way, and I would love for you to just introduce yourself and give people a little bit about your background, although I know we're going to be going a lot deeper into your background in a little bit.
For sure. Thanks for having me, Tiago. Yeah, my name's Hayden. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I have kind of always done things my own way, whether that's a good thing or not. Dropped out of high school at 17 and started my first business and have been self-employed since then. I lived life pretty fast, got married at 20, had two kids. I actually have like a 21-year-old and a 19-year-old now, and they're both out of the house now. Um, and also have started about, almost a dozen 7 to 8 figure businesses, and then started acquiring businesses through a few different holdcos over the years. So I've bought, almost 40 businesses outside of those and sold close to a dozen as well. Um, so I'm a businessman through and through. Um, Not really a public person, as Tiago will tell you. I kind of live in the middle of the forest. Um, but there hasn't been a time in the last 5 years or so that I've owned fewer than a dozen companies, which is kind of unique. And it's required me to spend a lot of time and resources in a different side of sort of what Tiago has been teaching, which is organizational knowledge management. Um, my life in business is probably a little different than most. I'd say outside of just sitting on boards, my role today has kind of become like an AI tinkerer. So I have meetings with the CEOs of my companies, usually once or twice a month if they're newer, maybe once every 2 to 3 months if they're more entrenched. So that's like maybe 5 meetings a week or so. And over the past at least 6 months, I'd say the majority of those meetings is basically identifying the current bottleneck in the business, and working with them on how to use AI to unclog it. So yeah, that's basically what my life has become, is just working with AI probably 8 to 10 hours a day to figure out sort of new ways to solve business challenges.
All right, so that's the perfect segue to begin sharing my slides. Okay, so you should be seeing we're not used to using webinar mode here, so someone let me know if you don't see the slides full screen. So that's a good segue to talk about how we got here. I had a couple of people ask me when they heard about this event, why now? Why this? What's happening now that you're coming out with this and in such kind of a big public way? So now that you know a little bit about us individually, I want to tell you a little bit about how we got here, like to this moment, to this workshop. And then in a minute, I'd also love to hear what brought you here. Okay, so the images here are the artist's interpretation, the artist being AI of this story. So none of these are real photos. I hope that's obvious. But basically, the brief story of how we got here is Hayden and I spend a lot of time, as I've said, immersed in AI, as he mentioned, experimenting with it, applying it to our businesses, trying to streamline things, make things more efficient, but in two very different contexts. Hayden is so let me start with myself. I'm really focused on the individual personal productivity, individual creativity, the creator economy, freelancers, that sort of individual psychology of how people change their productivity tools, how they become more productive, how they learn faster and better, all these kinds of questions. But I run a small business. We're 5 people. I don't really have much exposure besides some consulting gigs to how medium and large businesses are implementing AI or what that looks like. Hayden does. So Hayden not only has a much larger business with a lot more people in it and complex operations and workflows, but he actually can see across many businesses. Businesses he owns, businesses he invests in, businesses that he advises others, his clients, on either buying or selling. And we were actually introduced around 6 months ago, soon after I moved to the small town in Mexico, Valle de Bravo, where Hayden has lived for 20 years. We were introduced by a mutual friend, began playing paddleball. And after our Friday paddleball sessions, we go and have tacos. Our favorite place is wild boar meat tacos, and just kind of chatting and talking about stuff. And as we were talking, we realized, wait a minute, we're doing the same thing, but from two perspectives that are so complementary, that really fit each other, and that kind of approach the issue from two different angles. Me from the solo angle or small teams, him from the large teams. Wow. There's like car alarms going off and construction noises. So let me know if that's distracting. I've literally never heard that loud of sound before in our yard. Typical, typical. Okay. So now I'd love to know from you. I'm going to open up the chat here, and I'd love to hear what brings you here. And I don't mean, I saw a link on Facebook or on Twitter and I clicked it and I registered. I don't mean that, how you got here. I mean, what had you on a weekday, on a weekday, set aside your other priorities, make the time for this, to attend live or to watch the recording, if that's what you intend to do later. What had you make this a priority and set aside the time to be here? Well, the chat is moving so fast I can't keep up, but let me read some of these. Vika says he's here because he was curious. Faith wants to learn more about AI and how to help evolve and grow her business. MA cousin wants to future-proof their business and themselves. Don is a fan of mine and wants to know what I've been up to, where I've been the last 18 months. That's fair. That's fair. Melanie wants to understand how to use AI to unclog the bottlenecks associated with scaling a SaaS-based startup. Awesome. George is already using AI to improve his business and is curious about what I have to say, what we have to say. Okay, awesome. So I kind of get a mix of curiosity and also just wanting some practical advice and use cases for how to implement this in your business, which is the perfect reason to be here. Okay, so this is what we're going to cover. This workshop was originally 60 minutes, but we extended it a couple days ago to 90 minutes because we just have so much to cover. So if you're not able to stay the full 90 minutes, we'll send you the recording. But basically, we're going to cover four things. So first, a little bit of context around what is going on right now, like how we see the current landscape, and not just in a broad, general way, but we're really going to focus on a few key distinctions, a few key like perspectives that you need to consider to even understand why the method we're going to teach you is so powerful. Okay, so the context of what's going on in AI right now. Second is the master prompt method. We wanted to really teach you something during this workshop, like have you come away with something that you can immediately put to use. And so we chose one of the most powerful techniques that we're going to teach in the bigger program. Third, we're going to tell you about the bigger program that master prompt method fits into. And then we're going to tell you how to join if you decide that it's something that you want to invest in. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the context. So those of you who have been following me for a while know that I am a huge fan of history. You always need to understand what has recently happened to understand what is about to happen. And we sort of like been through these three eras in just a decade or two. So for a long time, note-taking was just on paper or in folders or in filing cabinets. It was extremely slow. It was extremely painstaking. It was time intensive. And even when you put in all that time and all that effort, it wasn't searchable, wasn't flexible. You couldn't really copy it easily from one place to another. You couldn't access it easily. That was like the ancient history of note-taking that ended around 2007 with the launch of the iPhone. This second one in the middle was the digital note-taking era, roughly from the start of smartphones to a few years ago. And this is where my work has focused on digital note-taking and personal knowledge management. And you know, this second era was a revolution. Like it's hard to remember now, but it was such a leap forward for it to be partially automated. For example, when you took a highlight in one place, it appeared somewhere else. It was much more streamlined. It was indexed and searchable for the first time. It was mobile friendly, right? Like if you followed my building a second brain work, we have spent years studying and improving and optimizing this digital note-taking era. But that era is now over, right? It's really over in many ways. I mean, it continues. Note-taking is still around. We still have a need to take notes to kind of capture the information in the first place. But I really think that we're in this new era of AI first organizations. Okay, so that means a couple things. It has a couple big implications. The first is that so much of that manual effort is just no longer needed. The manual capturing a lot of it, not needed. The organizing, the distilling, the summarizing, it's largely not necessary. It can be done for you, either in whole or in part. Uh, and I think a lot of people kind of get that implication. They're kind of aware of that. But the second one is kind of surprising, or has been surprising even to me, which is in the pre-AI era, note-taking was 100% personal. It was just you. It was you and your personal interests, your personal idiosyncratic, goals and projects. It was all just about you and no one else, right? It was all about creating your own personal system. But the thing with an AI first second brain, if you use AI to create it, is once you've created it, it's so easy to share with other people, right? Like once you put in the work to create an AI second brain, there's no reason to keep that for yourself. It can be easily shared with a colleague, with your spouse, with a team, across the whole organization. So it's almost like with AI, knowledge management becomes automatically social. It becomes, naturally a group effort and not something that you just do completely on your own. All right. So this is where I want to bring in Hayden's perspective a little as well, which is how AI is changing, is transforming businesses. So Hayden, you and I have talked about this a lot. You have a lot of fantastic just stories and examples and case studies, but I'd love if you just shared some of those examples. Like across all the organizations that you see, how do you see AI changing this AI revolution changing business?
So AI is it's the ultimate democratizer of intelligence and execution. And I think everyone sort of understands the intelligence piece right now, but the execution piece doesn't necessarily, it hasn't come to be yet, but it will. It will. And so I think AI will ultimately remove execution as an advantage in business, right? Um, which means an AI first company in every single industry will deliver, let's say you provide a service, they'll deliver the service faster, better, and cheaper than a non-AI first business. And if you look at sort of standard technology adoption curves, I would say, depending on your industry, you have probably somewhere between 1 and 5 years before that is true. And I say depending on your industry because obviously certain industries like marketing, software, finance are a little bit more progressive. And I'd say that you're probably closer to the 1 year. In other industries that are more brick and mortar, um, are probably closer to the 5 year. Um, so I kind of look at this for people who own businesses and for all of my businesses as it's an existential risk, right? But it's also an opportunity because the reality, we'll get into this a little bit later, but my goal in my companies and for my leadership teams was always, sustainable growth was maybe 30 to 40% year over year growth to the bottom line. With AI, that's no longer the case. Like sustainable growth can now be 3 to 5 times growth per year, right? So literally 10 times higher. And I firmly believe that even 1 to 2 years of execution today, AI first, is enough to actually build a moat to protect your business going forward. We'll get into that further. I think you're muted,
Oops,
Tiago.
sorry. Yeah, I'm back. So you kind of see, and you've mentioned to me that this window of opportunity that you said is how long approximately before this really becomes mainstream?
It depends. I mean, I would predict on the industry, like depends on the industry. Like if you're a marketing agency, I think you have a year. Right. But I think if I buy a lot of sort of brick and mortar, sort of recession resilient businesses, HVAC, plumbing, roofing, and stuff. And I think probably that's likely, 5 plus years. And I would also say that the cost of not being AI first is a little less because you are still limited by actual physical people going to somebody's home or property and doing the work, right? And that will eventually be replaced by robotics, but that's probably, a decade and a half away.
All right. Okay, so that's just the context step. Okay, the context stage. So let's get into a question I have for you, for you all, which is your perspective on this. I'd love to know. I mean, many of you are working in businesses. or organizations of some kind, what is one shift or trend or pivot or some kind of impact that you're seeing in your industry because of AI? Could be quote unquote positive or negative, could be something that you like or you don't like, could be something that's growing your organization or shrinking it. But I'd love to hear from you what you're seeing. Alex sees no coding. Susan is using AI to summarize research. Graham is seeing the quality of code go down quite rapidly. It's interesting. Jen is seeing faster product innovation, cheating. I'm assuming that means cheating on schoolwork. It's more difficult to find work as a copywriter, building products faster, focusing on patience instead of documentation. So I can just kind of see the whole diversity of different fields and industries represented here. Donna is pivoting 100% to using AI for sales enablement. Jason is using it for complaints management, increased creativity, confusion, summarization, faster research. All right, so I just wanted to be sure, but what I'm seeing here is that you all are experiencing and seeing the AI revolution the same as we are. All right, okay. So let's talk about the master prompt method. Um, let's just get into it. So let me give you the upfront, the one sentence definition. Okay. The master prompt method is kind of simple in many ways. It's an approach to using AI, all AI, that is providing all the context about you, your organization, your offerings, all the context that the AI that you're interacting with needs to understand you and to know who you are and your background, and needs that context to make good decisions, and doing it upfront and all at once. That's the key part. Okay. Doing it upstream, doing it early, doing it at the beginning so that all the subsequent interactions with the AI take into account all of that context. Okay. So I'll contrast that with how most people use AI, which is they try to use fancy prompts, right? They sit down, they have a question, and they think, let me use the craziest multi-step, fancy secret prompt that I learned about from some social media guru, which is not the worst way to interact with AI. I mean, it's better than nothing. It's better than just asking a simple generic question, but it is much more powerful to provide all that context up front. Okay. And there's a couple key distinctions here that I think you need to understand to see why that is so powerful. And then we're going to look at really concrete examples and case studies. Okay. The first one is, and I talked about this in my recent YouTube video about Notebook LM, in case you're curious about that. But every AI has two kinds of knowledge. It has general knowledge, which is what it was trained on, right? So that's like the billions or trillions of data points that an AI was trained on before it gets released to the public. And that's the knowledge that I think people spend way too much time on. They worry about, oh, which model do I use? Which version of the model, like which product, which interface. And that stuff matters, but the reality is you don't have any control over it, right? You can't see what, say, ChatGPT was trained on. You can't change it. You can't edit it. There's nothing you can do about that. All you can do is sign up to use, the latest model that everyone else is using. What matters far more, and what people almost don't even realize is a thing, is contextual knowledge, right? Think about, does the AI model that you are working with know about you, the history of your career, the history of your organization? Does it know your core values? Does it know your org chart? Does it know the products you offer? Does it know your approach to customer service? All that context is absolutely what makes the biggest difference in your ability to get value from AI now. All right. And the second distinction, which Hayden introduced me to, and the examples he's going to show here in a minute are great examples of this. I think most people are really overly focused on operational initiatives. They're trying to make little kind of uh, process improvements, become a little more efficient at checking email, make their Zoom meetings a little more efficient, become, slightly more productive with their calendar. And, I'm into that stuff. I love the latest productivity app the same as everyone else. But where AI is really most powerful is in transformational initiatives. It's in like leveling up your organization from one level to another, increasing growth by double or even triple digits, cutting a team in half while doubling its output. Those sort of like before and after, like paradigm shift initiatives. All right. So Hayden, I'll turn it over to you. And I'd love for you, you've been using the master prompt method in multiple businesses for a while now. What are some of the things that it makes possible?
Yeah, it's I saw someone in the chat here basically say you're like dumping your second brain into AI. That's absolutely true. But you're also sharing it with everyone on your team. So when I first started playing with ChatGPT, and when ChatGPT became useful to me, outside of just being a little gimmicky and a bit better than Google, was when they implemented memories, right? Because those memories slowly gave you context. And I remember when I was first playing with it, I'd be like, remember this, remember this, remember this. And I was kind of building up through its memories, which were kind of limited. Um, I guess a second brain, right? And then I found that there are other tools that you can kind of just put all those memories in, and that you can also share with others. And that was really the transformation moment. So, you know, I like imagining sort of, we often will have to go and like hire a director position, which by the way, like one of the takeaways of this whole thing, those are just going to disappear, right? Um, but imagine you need to hire a 250K a year marketing director in your business, right? And perhaps the marketing function of the organization's been kind of ignored because you're a small business. You haven't put your time into it. So okay, you need to come up with a plan. It's going to take a couple weeks to onboard that person, right? Fully understand everything about your business, their co-workers, you know, how we do business. And then it might take another couple weeks for them to actually come up with a marketing plan, right? Um, Whereas with AI, you can actually do all of that with a master prompt in under 10 seconds, like literally under 10 seconds. And then we can show examples of that. Um, but to me, that's just a massive fundamental change. One of the demos that I think I showed you, Tiago, when we first met, and you asked me how I was using AI, was something very basic, right? Which was basically like, how do I use AI for like recruiting and hire, right? Um, and if let me share my screen here. So like here's an empty Claude account, right? And if you ask like, I need to hire, can you see my screen by the way?
Yes.
Yeah. Um, this is like how I'd say most people kind of start with AI, right? They start with a very simple prompt like this, right? And they get something back that's pretty generic, right? Doesn't really know anything about your company, doesn't really know anything at all. So I would have to go back and forth here, right? This is no better than really Googling marketing director job description and then copying and pasting something, right? So here's an example on one of my company's accounts for the same thing. And so part of, I'll share my master prompt here in a second, but part of the master prompt is I say AI hiring and it knows exactly what to do with that, right? And it's got an instruction to basically come back. Let you read this. Okay, so basically it says, I'm going to ask you 5 questions one at a time, and I'm going to answer based on what I already know about the company.
And so the first question is, what are the primary responsibilities you envision for the marketing director? Based on what I know, they would oversee all marketing initiatives for both acquired and potentially sell the company, focus on lead generation for the accelerator program, both of our programs. Um, Here's the team that they would manage. Uh, they need to optimize current channels. Okay, yeah, so that's right. So I just have it ask me in case something's off. It asks about what specific marketing metrics and KPIs should this be accountable for. So qualified leads, generated setting calls and demos, cost per lead, currently 130 per show call, conversion rates through the funnel, supporting sales targets. You know, yeah, that's right. Budget and how it's allocated and goals. Yeah, this is all correct. Yeah, this is the team.
I just want to I want to point out, like, are you guys noticing the level of detail? It's not making up generic things to just fill out a massive document. It's naming specific people in specific positions. It knows how many leads they need. It knows conversion rates. It knows so much about the organization that it's hiring for. And Hayden, you've gone through this process in detail and confirmed that everything really is correct. It doesn't just like seem
Yes,
correct.
it's 100% correct. Yeah. Um, yeah, it knows our core values, um, knows what our nice to haves are, right? It's like understanding M&A and business acquisition is a nice to have, not a must have. Yeah. So based on this, it now is going out and creating separate artifacts. I think it's going to create like 5 different, they're called artifacts in Claude, which are basically like documents. So one of them is a job description. That job description is tied into, we use top rating, and top rating is it's a pretty sophisticated like hiring and measurement methodology. It's something that's takes a lot of work or used to and before AI. So basically what that means is we have like all of the responsibilities here. Um, it's got the metric to measure and our quarterly target for every responsibility. It shows what's my month 1, month 2, and month 3 and beyond outcomes for this person in this role. What does A player performance look like for each of the major responsibilities? And what's sort of an ideal background and experience? It came out with the compensation. Obviously, I'm going to review this. Um, and yeah, so that's the job description. It then creates a screening rubric and recruitment materials, um, which is basically we, through a cover letter, it will analyze all of the most important sort of screening rubrics, score them, and help us on the screening side so that our HR director, um, only talks with people above a certain score, right? It also created an email for my list if I wanted just to hire from our list. And it created a job posting for an external site. Um, it created for the actual manager. So we usually have, in this case, we probably have, 3 different people interviewing for director. But it creates actual live case studies that we can do for the working interview. It gives us 3 different options. It creates take-home homework, which I would always do for a manager, knowledge worker, or director. Um, it creates the meeting structures and agendas for every single meeting that this role would be in with everyone, actual people. And it also creates the independent contractor agreement because in this case, it would probably be not a W-2. So all of this with literally, I typed like 10 words. I think I typed 9 words here and then yes a few times. And so that's just one example in one function on how like a master prompt combined with an operating system can be quite, not only does it save you a lot of time, but it allows you to do like significantly more than you're most likely currently doing, which is quite transformational.
And you mentioned to me, what does this do to the timeline for like, what would it take to do this in a normal timeline to go from realizing you need to hire for this position to having the person in place and onboarded and everything versus what the timeline looks like with AI?
So like if I was doing this 6 months ago manually, um, and we had an HR department with two people, and it would this thing here would take probably two people 2 weeks, I'd say. Um, Now we have a little bit of a custom setup on like how the screening works as well. That probably also saves an additional, depending on how many people we're hiring at once, it could save an additional couple weeks a month. Um, but yeah,
So,
this right here replaced 2 weeks of work for two people.
so two people for 2 weeks versus interacting with an AI for minutes. And how close to this? Like, is this literally something you could just copy and paste right onto your website? Or how close is it to
Yeah.
being ready to go live?
Yeah, the thing I would look at most would be probably the actual metrics here, like the quarterly targets. This is the place that I would probably spend maybe 15 minutes just making sure that they're absolutely correct. Outside of that, I basically don't even look anymore because I know it's going to be accurate. So that's the one area I pay a bit more attention to. Maybe the meeting side too. I'll look at that. Um, yeah, but I would say I can't even. I would say just this thing has probably saved people on my team probably years of work in the last 3 months. And probably even me, like that's the other thing is like even though even though you might have like an HR person like filling all this stuff out and preparing everything, like you also need that person to go and talk to you about, hey, what is this person's KPIs? What is this person's like good outcomes? What does an A player look? Because they don't know, right? Like how could they know? And so it's also probably saved, whoever's that operational person, like the director in that department. Um, it's probably also saved them like, 4 or 5 meetings per person.
Mhm. And what's the bigger, so there's time savings, cost savings, but like what does it do to an organization when this kind of time savings, you're talking about like 99% plus time savings, gets multiplied across every role, every team, every function? Like what is the high level strategic impact?
I mean, that's why I said, I think it's actually accurate to be able to move at 10 times the speed, right? So my goals, in the beginning of 2024 for my companies, um, for 2026. So I'll usually look up to 2 years in advance. But I was reviewing this on a few different companies. And at the beginning of 2024, before I was really using AI heavily, I'd set the goals for 2025, 2026. Um, and they are now, the beginning of 2025, the 2026 goals are 10x higher. So it is a 10xing a year type of, or 3xing a year, 10xing over maybe 2 to 3 years type of initiative.
Yeah.
I think the big difference though isn't that because most people wouldn't put like this type of effort, like GM does this, right?
Mhm.
GM does talk rating. They kind of became famous for it. And most small businesses can't do it because there's just so much work. And like I over invested in it for the company size before to do it because I knew how important it was, right? I knew how important it is to hire slowly and fire fast, right? That's you learn that quickly. But what this means is now everybody can do it, right? And to me, that's transformational because I think everyone on this call who has ever hired, an A player before knows that that person like they can transform your business, right? They are better than you at what they're doing.
Yeah,
And it's, one A player is worth sometimes 10, 20, you know, average contributors.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Could you show, so I want to see one more example in a completely different domain, which is operations and workflows. Could you show that example? And then I want to show people what your master prompt actually looks like, because that is what allows you to do what you just did so fast.
Yep. So part of the sort of operating system we have here is we create fulfillment engines, which are basically flowcharts for process, right? Again, this is the type of thing that's like a best practice for larger companies. But it's something that we try to do pretty early, right? Um, and this is another example on like AI can expose this level of organization, discipline, consistency, to businesses with one employee, right? So this is basically on the same company. This is an example of a fulfillment engine for basically a process that helps bring someone through onboarding all the way to helping them get a signed letter of intent to buy a business, right? Um, so I'm just gonna screenshot a piece of this. Let's go here. I'll go back to Claude here. And so most AI, you can just copy and paste the screenshot in. So I just did that. And I'm just going to ask it, just want to make sure it understands what this is.
So it's
Yeah, so
it's
basic,
analyzing the image and then pulling in the context from your master prompt.
yep. And it's, yeah, so the slide shows a 7-day onboarding process. It begins when 75K is received, includes steps like blah, blah, blah. Right side illustrates the deal sourcing and evaluation workflow with various roles involved. Here are the roles. There are decision points like off-market review with past for good fit and bad fit outcomes. Yep, totally right. So I'm just going to say do AI SOP for every step. And again, as part of the master prompt, is actually really only like a couple paragraphs. I say what AI SOP is, which again is part of it, sort of understanding our operating system. So it's now going and creating SOPs for each step in the flowchart, in the style that we like to have. So like objective, begin, end, stakeholders involved, explanation of each step, the checklist for each step. And so that's the first one. This is the second one. And it's going to keep on going until all of them in that screenshot are done. For some context, we built this in this company about a year and a half ago. It took us probably 6 months to do this. Just this step. We have like a lot of these in every company. But just this one took us about 6 months to do. And you can see like each one of these actually links to an SOP. We include this in all our onboarding, right? So that everyone understands the entire process and what part of the process, they're involved in, right? And it goes kind of all the way to the point of an LOI being signed. And we can now do this it's really just waiting, right? I just need to wait for it to finish all of them. And then I'll go and screenshot the next part of it. It'll do those. So overall, it's maybe like 30 minutes now to do something that took 6 months, and they're good. They're super accurate. I would still review them, but they are better than the version that was originally created that I also had to review before, like significantly better.
So that 6 months it would have taken before, that's 6 months by how many people?
6 months primarily by probably 2 people. So it would have been, we have a process person, and actually my daughter. I showed her this and she cried.
Cried from
Like,
joy
no.
or
No, just like I don't have a job anymore. No, I said no. You have to use it. Um, so she was the person who did this, and then she worked with the managers, and so it was mainly one other person who kind of managed this entire fulfillment engine. Um, but it was, yes, a full 6 months from her, and probably like, at least a day a week from whoever was owning each SOP.
Yeah, I hope you guys are seeing what I'm seeing. Like, do you all get how transformational it is to take 6-month initiatives and turn them into 30-minute ones? That isn't a that isn't a marginal small change. That starts to uh completely change the structure of your business, what is even possible in your business, the markets you can serve. You know what really strikes me about this, Hayden, which I hadn't realized before, is both of these examples, hiring a like a manager executive position and documenting a process. Uh, it's kind of like AI is collapsing a lot of the gap between large companies and small companies. Like our
Yep.
tiny company of 5 people, one of the main reasons I don't hire people, humans, is because it takes us months and months and months and so much bandwidth that it's like too big of a risk for us. We can't afford to set aside all the time it takes to do it really thoroughly and to do it well. And so we just don't do it. And so now we can hire at the same level of sophistication as a large organization.
That's what I mean by the democratization of execution, right? Is like this level of, we call this like best practices, right? But this level of best practice has typically been reserved for companies that were, probably around 10 million revenue and up, right? Maybe 1 to 2 million EBITDA and up, like, and now it's open to anyone, right? And so like you hear a lot of people talking about, the one-person billion-dollar companies. Well, maybe we're not there yet, but we are definitely at the, one-person $10 million companies, right?
Mm,
Or the three-person, $100 million companies. 100%, we're already there, right?
yeah.
And so we used to, when we bought businesses, right? We had an integration program after we bought a business, and so the integration program was basically, it was there to kind of mitigate like the transition risk between the seller and the new owner, but it's also there to set up a leadership team. And the goal, it was like usually a 6 month integration change management program we did. And we would tell people, hey, the goal of this is, we would say, this is what good looks like in all of these different areas in a business, right? And we'd say the goal of this is to build up a leadership team that understands what good looks like. Like we would set up tours of other businesses that were already there, right? Maybe 3 to 5 years ahead of them. Um, but also to understand the work you need to do over the next 3 to 4 years to implement these best practices, right? That was the expectation we set. Today, you can implement them all if you were really working on it, in under a year, in 6 months easily. So like my new approach to buying a business is totally changed, right? It's not like, let's set up a leadership team to figure this out so that we can get to this level of good in 4 years. It's like, let's just do it. Like we have 6 months, let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's incredible. Could you just briefly scroll through the master prompt? So again,
Sure.
this is just one of the techniques we're going to teach out of many others in the Second Brain Enterprise program, but I just want to have you just see a brief look at how it's structured.
So I share this master prompt with everyone in the company, and it's part of the onboarding. They learn how to use it. This part at the top here, we usually have this in a Google Doc. This part at the top is customized to each person. So in this case, it's doing it for me in this role, right? Um, it understands all of our structure information, our product information, our goals and targets. Um, that was for one product. This is for another product. Um, Understands our sales funnel and conversion metrics, our sales process, what kind of conversion rates do we hit? How long does it take? Um, yeah, our teams, right? So these are each of our teams, our fixed costs for each team. So I can, at any point, it acts as my CFO or my controller. If I needed to just say, hey, how are we doing? We got this many sales. Like I can do cash flow management just back and forth instead of looking at Google Sheets. Um, this is probably about like 20 pages in a Google Doc, 22 pages. And what we've done is we've set it up in such a way where you just kind of go through a couple questionnaires and it spits out the master prompt done for you.
Yeah. So
And so here's some
20
examples of
page. So you have a
here's
20-page master prompt. And you said there's like a company one, and then each person has their own version of it. And that is what it allows those interactions that you showed us to be so high quality and so precise.
yep. Yeah, and it's just this is out of the box, right? This is just Claude Pro, right? There's no code, nothing at all. Like anyone can do this. You can do this, even if you don't have a business, you can exactly do this like for your second brain. So this is some inspiration for you to take from it. Um, and if you do that, or if you're involved in like a role in a business, there's like a section at the top that basically says, what's your role? What do you want to get out of AI? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Right.
Mhm.
And so I think I've
Yeah.
got that at the top of mine here. I just say like, you know, my strengths are visionary, product learning, self-discipline, problem solving, and my weaknesses are like driving accountability, keeping everything on schedule, internal communication, doing things I don't like doing. Um, and so
And
it understands that.
yeah. Yeah. So, okay, I want to move on here, but I hope you guys are sort of seeing the potential of all this. Um, so there's another piece to understanding this, which I'll share here on the screen, which is the Empower operating system. So the master prompt method is like one technique, one tool, but it's not the end all be all. It's like one technique. There's a whole broader framework that you've been developing for years and years, and you use across all your companies. It's called Empower, which the master prompt fits into, but it kind of provides essentially a holistic way of managing and building and scaling a business. And this is essentially how the curriculum of our program will be structured. We're going to spend one 90-minute live session on each of these 7 pillars, and then another three 90-minute live sessions on the introduction and conclusion. Okay, so we're not going to get super into this, but could you say a few words, Hayden, on kind of what Empower is and why and how it's proven?
Yeah. So Empower is the name of one of my companies as well. Basically, these are the 7, I call them value drivers, that apply to every business. And so, what we just saw is part of, actually both E's. So the expansion capability and execution systems. And basically, the way this originated is because I have a business that helps people buy businesses. It actually originated as a way to come up with like the intrinsic value of businesses that we were assessing. And in that space, businesses are kind of the pricing of businesses is very unsophisticated. And so we wanted to create a much more sophisticated version of seeing if a business was, fairly priced or not. Um, it then later kind of expanded as we bought businesses in also understanding what are the areas that you could focus on, apply leverage to in order to actually expand the overall value of the business, right? So if you wanted to sell it, if you wanted to raise money and buy another business, what was the best way to spend resources, right? Your time and your cash. And so we separated it into these 7 value drivers. And we created some tools to kind of assess our businesses and kind of give us a score in each of them, and help us figure out what we need to prioritize, right? Because that's really all strategy is just deciding to work on one thing and saying no to everything else. Um, and so these are the 7 areas. What our program does now is it shows you how to A, how much is your business worth today? Um, B, how do you score in each of these areas? Um, C, what is the area that has the highest leverage that you should invest in? And D, how do you apply AI to do that?
So I think this is so huge because there's this funny question, which is like, how do you know if you've successfully applied AI in a business? If you think about it, it's not just that it feels like it. Like, it's not that you see, ChatGPT on people's screens when you look over their shoulder. It's not even really that you save time, because how do you know the task that you're saving time in is inherently valuable? What I love about this is it takes the perspective that the true test of whether you successfully applied AI is the valuation of the whole enterprise is higher. Like, it's higher to third-party buyers, like disinterested outside people looking from the outside in and saying, yeah, you have more automation, you're more efficient, you have higher margins, you have higher return on assets. Like, there's no more objective measure of an organization's improvement than its valuation, right? Okay. So I'd love to hear from you now. We've sort of touched on a couple in-depth demos, tried to sort of mention at least a variety of different parts of a business or even kinds of businesses that this could be applied in. But I'd love to see in the chat, what do you take away from this? What's the area of your business? You could say a specific role, you could say a function, you could say an ongoing activity, you could say a specific product, however you break down and visualize your business. Yeah, so blog posts and content creation, sales for sure. Strategy, Anouk says strategy, positioning, and market analysis. Absolutely. Fantastic use case. Ryan says his email list. Gabriel says code reviews and pair programming. Absolutely. Client avatar analysis. We've been using it for that. It's fantastic. Customer service and success, decision making. I really don't think there is a function or a kind of business that cannot apply this, honestly. Okay. So I think we've said a little bit about this, but is there anything you'd like to add, Hayden, about what's at stake here? What are people's options? Like, what's the fork in the road that they're facing with AI right now?
Yeah, it's kind of what I said before. It's like, depending on your industry, it'll happen. The question is when, right? But someone AI first will just solve execution, right? They'll do it faster, they'll do it cheaper, and they'll do it better. Um, and that is gonna eventually drive costs down to the end users massively and destroy margins. Like, that's the nature of, you know, of deflationary technology, right? Um, that being said, I think if you are the first person to do that, and if you design it in such a way that you are creating a moat that protects the company long term, right? And I think you've talked in the past about, what is the moat long term, right? It's community, it's data, right? It's network effects. I believe that there is a chance to become a market leader insanely fast by using AI and to protect your business from that sort of margin erosion.
Yeah, I think that's it. Very well put. Um, Actually, I want to do a poll now. You should see a little window pop up on your screen that asks a question, which is, how concerned are you about your business falling behind due to competitors using AI? And I'd honestly just really like to know. I'm pretty concerned about my business, to be honest. I think much or most of content creation in the future is going to be done by AI. But how about you? Okay, when it hits 500 responses, I'm going to end the poll. Okay. So here's what you responded. 26% of you are extremely concerned, 38% somewhat concerned, 18% neutral, 3% not concerned. I would love to know your stress reduction techniques, and 15% already ahead. Okay, makes sense. Pretty reasonable distribution. Okay, so we didn't want to just spell doom and gloom for everyone. We want to actually provide a solution. And this is the program, the educational and training program that we have created to give you the absolute best possible tools and techniques and frameworks and strategies to not just survive all these enormous changes that we're facing and already experiencing, but to actually come away with it as an opportunity to come out of it better. So just the basics, it's a live cohort. Many of you have probably taken my Building a Second Brain cohorts in the past. We did 19 of them. It's something we've been doing for many years. This is the biggest, longest cohort we've ever done because there is a lot to cover. So we're going to be doing 10 live sessions over 3 weeks. So it's a sprint. We chose to do it short and intense rather than long and not so intense, largely because it's changing so much. Like the field of AI will be different 1 month later versus the beginning of that month. Okay. And that's alongside dedicated peers, which is one of the things I found and many people have found is one of the best ways to learn is not just from a single instructor, or in this case, two instructors, but to be able to look right and left and see all these other business owners and executives and leaders who are just as dedicated as you, who are passionate, who are committed, who are accountable and holding you accountable. It's really why we love that kind of social cohort learning experience. Second, this is a chance to get our direct support. You're going to get, both of us are going to be on every single call, of course. You're going to get not just our instruction, but our guidance, our coaching, our do's and don'ts. We've made some big mistakes, wasted a lot of time, a lot of trial and error that we're going to try to save you from. And this is the first and possibly only time that we're going to do a live cohort. We may do another one again, probably not anytime soon, maybe like next year or something. This is not something we're going to be doing ongoingly for a long time. This might be your one chance to go through the program in real time with us. And you'll receive lifetime access not only to the recordings, all the materials, everything to do with this first cohort, which is really a beta cohort. Plus, you'll also get automatic access to whatever the next iteration looks like. We don't know what that is exactly. It depends a lot on what we learn from this cohort. But whatever is V2 of this, or I guess the full V1, you will also get access to. All right. Do you want to say a little bit about so this is sort of some of the main takeaways or outcomes that you'll take away from the curriculum. Is there anything you want to say about these, Hayden?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you'll learn the master prompt. So I think everyone after this should go and play with Claude or Notebook LM and try to put together their own master prompt anyway. But we have a bunch of sort of custom software tools we've done to kind of facilitate this and make sure it doesn't take you forever and nothing is neglected. As Tiago mentioned, we're going to have a session around each of those value drivers. And so we'll actually help you kind of score where you're at with each of those value drivers, and how that kind of also contributes to the value of your business. And then we're also going to teach you how to use AI and how we've used AI in each of those value drivers. So, for example, in some of it may even be using third-party tools, right? So, for example, I've replaced over $1 million of ad spend in sort of various versions of AI tools that set thousands of calls for us. We're going to teach exactly how we did that. And then the last piece of it is understanding. So once you know kind of your score in each of these areas, once you understand how to use AI, the last piece of this, which is quite important, is understanding like what the next steps are and how you should spend your time and prioritize this. Because the last thing we want is everyone just being overwhelmed and trying to work on everything at once, right? So the idea is to have like a very clear sprint on this is how I'm going to use AI to maximum leverage.
That's right. What's so unique is we're going to be able to actually, instead of giving you homework, okay, now go and find all this other time to go do this by yourself. With the speed at which AI works, we can actually do it right there on the call. Like, try this, wait 30 seconds, see what happened, and iterate right there in real time. It's a really unique way of learning this. All right. And here's the cost. $9,995 is the investment that you're going to make to essentially change the trajectory of your business. It's not an incremental, 5-10% improvement. We're talking about, multiples of growth, multiples of speed, multiples of margins, of customer satisfaction. That's why we insist on that word transformational. This is a level of investment that probably doesn't make sense for individual contributors. I'll just say that. It's really designed, and everything about this program is designed for people with teams. They can be small teams, they can be small businesses, but it's combining really the leverage of AI with the leverage of an organization of some type. Combining those two together is where that transformation, where that power lies. And just a couple notes there. It's by application only. Not everyone will be accepted. There's a quite thorough application. Depending on your answers to that application, you'll be asked to, or you'll be required to schedule a call. Everyone needs a call with one of our admissions leads, which is Josh and Josh, or both Joshes, just to make sure that you're the right fit. And they're going to really make sure that you and your organization are the right kind of organization to go through this. And we do have payment plans. So that is an option as well. And it's called the Second Brain Enterprise. Just a quick overview of the timeline. So what should you do? What will you need to do to join us? First, apply at the link below. The last possible date to do that is May 26th, but I encourage you to do it sooner because we do have some pre-work, some preparation for you to do. As I said, you'll be asked to schedule a call with one of our 2 admissions leads to make sure you're a good fit. If accepted, make your payment before the start of the cohort. And you can do all of that at secondbrainenterprise.com, which is the website that also has all of the details that we've talked about during this workshop and many others. Everything that you're going to need to know to decide whether this is for you. All right. Now it's your turn. Have about 15 minutes here. So I'm going to open up the Q&A now and sort by most upvotes. So some of these I can just answer myself quickly. Nikolai, no, there will not be a handout with instructions. We're going to be creating content, either a YouTube video or a blog post or something along those lines about the master prompt method, because I just think it should be much more widely known, and it's something that really anyone can use, regardless of what AI program they use. So we will be creating content on that, but currently don't have anything ready to share besides the recording of this call. This is one for you, Hayden, from Andre. It took 10 words to type your prompt for hiring a marketing director, but how long did it take to set up the context? How much effort did it take to gather the content, curate it, and set it up within Claude?
I would say it takes people probably about 30 to 60 minutes to go through everything necessary to set up the first sort of major iterations of the master prompt. And then you're kind of iterating probably pretty frequently. I still iterate the master prompt at least once a week. So yeah, probably 30 to 60 minutes one time. But then obviously that was just one example of I use Claude probably 30, 40 times a day.
Yeah, I think that's an important observation, which is the master prompt is a thing, it's a document, but it's also a process. The process for how to update it, for how to propagate it within the organization, for how to bring it into different AI products you might use. So it is a one and done deal, but then it's also like something that evolves with you. Okay. Um, okay, some of these are quite a bit out of the scope of what we're covering on this workshop, so I'm going to skip a couple. Um, what's your take on agents? So are is AI going to become these autonomous thinking partners that just do work on our behalf, or what is that going to look like?
Yeah, agents are definitely the future. They're all the rage right now. The reality is I don't like if you look at sort of the adoption curve, agents, in my opinion, are not the thing today. The thing is really get people to learn how to use LLMs properly and get people to prompt properly, right? So the master prompt as a concept, like if you actually think of what you're doing, is you in every single time you type 10 words, you're actually typing, 20 pages, right? Plus 10 words. And so the AI's got all the context every single time. Um, I believe autonomous agents in probably 2 years or so will actually be decent and won't require like a ridiculous amount of setup. We do use them, right? So I use agents all over the place. Um, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of setup and it's not accessible to most people today. I think that'll change in 2 years.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Let's talk about security and privacy. The elephant in the room so often when we talk about AI. How do you think about that, Hayden? Like using AI so widely across multiple organizations, do you worry about security or privacy? Do you do anything to mitigate them?
It's so that's actually more of an agent question is like, um, are you exposing anything to like are you exposing your back end through a chatbot to front end customers, right? Uh, and so that's more of an agent question than like am I working with an LLM question?
Hmm.
Um, and there are ways to go about that. It's another version, basically a separate agent watching the communication that your chatbot has with customers to ensure that it's not doing certain things. And so you have that sort of guardrail.
Mhm. So do you ever think about using either offline, internet, local AI models so that you don't even so the public let's say whatever it is, the product you're
Yep.
using that is publicly that is a different company from your own does not even see your data at all?
Yeah, my programmer has run Llama and DeepSeek both locally. We run MCP. Um, the To me personally, I'm maybe it's my personality. I'm less concerned about, Anthropic potentially knowing details about my companies. There's nothing in there. Like I'm sharing this with my employees. There's nothing in there that's like not pretty much public knowledge. Um, so no, I'm not, I guess, paranoid to that extent. But
Yeah.
you can do it if you are, right?
Yeah. Yeah, me neither. Me neither. It's like compared to what's already out there, what has been mined and profiled about you, from all the companies out there doing that. Compared to that, I think what we are sharing with these LLMs is quite minor, and in most cases, practically public knowledge. Ramiro asked, so you have a digital note-taking app like Evernote or Ample Notes. Will this class teach me how to bring content from that into LLM models? Yes, that's one of the things. So I'm going to be sort of providing a bridge from a lot of what I've taught about personal knowledge management, digital note-taking, building second brains at the personal level, and bridging that. And actually, if you've been doing any of those things, you are so incredibly well positioned, right? Like most people don't even have all this context that we're talking about in any place. So they have to produce it, they have to generate it, they have to like pull it out of them. If you've already been taking notes, even if they're messy, even if they're disorganized, if that context, those notes even exist, you are like that's half the battle. You're kind of already you have a head start in taking advantage of this approach. Let's see. I think we already addressed that. Do you ever worry in the responses that AI is generating? Do you ever worry, Hayden, about bias? Any kind of bias? Bias towards, hiring only certain kinds of people, bias like blind spots in how they make decisions, biasing themselves based on your past, like replicating mistakes or biases that you had in the history of the organization, anything like that?
But I actually, I'm gonna, I guess, look at that question from two different perspectives, right? So from one perspective, I actually intentionally give AI bias to counter my bias,
Hmm.
right? And so that's why I very specifically have in my master plans, like, what do I want AI for? And what are my weaknesses,
Hmm.
right? And I find a lot of AI is like actually a little bit too positive, uh, and a little bit too chipper. And sometimes I will add to my master prompt to be like a bit more of like a coach and a leadership coach and like to, call a spade, right? In terms of like DEI based bias and like bigoted, right? Um, it's something to check for sure. And that's why when we set up these initial prompts, we do check to make sure like the initial screening works, right? And by works, I mean isn't bigoted. From at least with Anthropic, that wasn't the case, right? We had a lot of pretty equal distribution um, across you know genders and races. So, but yeah, I think it's if that's something that you're concerned about, I think you put some extra effort um, into the prompts to ensure that
Mhm.
you overcome it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Same perspective from me. Um, so we have about 6 minutes, 5 minutes left. I'd love to hear any questions about the program. So I'm going to sort the questions here by most recent. If you're someone who sees yourself joining or at least applying for something like the Second Brain Enterprise, do you have any questions that we can answer about that? When you do your call with our admissions people, you'll also have the chance to ask them anything you want. Really, we're pretty transparent about everything about what the program entails. But is there anything that we can address now up front? Oh, Mark's question about AI tools. We will recommend Claude and Notebook LM. Those are really the only two like publicly available mainstream platforms that have the key feature of getting a project like folder or notebook with a bunch of materials, including your master prompt, and sharing it. It's kind of crazy, it's kind of bizarre, but you can't do that in ChatGPT unless you use the API and build a whole custom solution. So for the use cases that we are advocating and teaching in the program, you essentially can't use ChatGPT. You'll need to use either either Claude or Notebook LM.
That's for the master prompt side of it, and I think for the sharing with your organization side of it, I do use almost every LLM, and like we probably will tell you what LLMs are good for. Like ChatGPT does much better image generation; it's better on voice stuff. Deep research is useful. It's just for the actual master prompt part of it, it it doesn't work. Likewise, I use Gemini for coding, like vibe coding all the time. It's probably the best coder. Um, in AI Studio, but their gems thing just don't have it doesn't work properly. Um,
Mhm.
that being said, this could all change also in the next 30 days. It could be that ChatGPT opens up this feature and we say, okay, yeah, you can use ChatGPT as well. Here you go.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay, I'm looking for any As our time is
What
ending,
time
I'm
will the
looking for
sessions?
what's that?
Um,
Oh, I don't.
Gabrielle asked that what time will the sessions be?
Oh, yes. 8 a.m. Pacific, which we've found is the 90 minutes that works for the largest number of time zones. Works for the Americas, works for Europe. Asia, I think it's like 11 p.m. or midnight, but also is feasible. That tends to be the ideal slot for our cohort sessions. Oh, I guess I should switch to the chat now. Mohammed, you can catch up via the recording, which we'll send out later today or tomorrow. No, we don't. We're not offering any discounts. No country specific or currency specific pricing. That's not an option for this beta cohort. Okay. Any last comments, Hayden?
No, just yeah, thanks. This was fun. I do encourage everyone, regardless as to whether they want to join the program, use AI, regardless of your background. I saw someone asking, hey, if I'm a retiree, should I use AI? I have spent a lot of time teaching both of my in-laws and my mother to spend time with AI because it just it makes you better at whatever it is that you want to do. It makes you better and it makes you better at learning. Which to me, like that's what life is for. I use it to with my daughter learn Japanese. I've used it even to help my paddle game with Tiago. It's
Oh, so that's your
if anyone
secret.
gets if anyone gets something out of this, my hope is it's just start using AI.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. All right, everyone. Thank you for being here. Hope this was helpful, whether or not you decide to join us. But if you do decide to join us, I look forward to seeing you learning together in what I am certain will be an intense, but also very enlightening and informative and communal program that we're going to be launching here in about a month and a half. All right, everyone. I'll see you later. Bye bye.